great to talk to him. And I love getting into the heads of racing drivers when they're not at a race weekend, because it gives them chance to talk and tell us a little bit about what is an amazing career.
And I love how it transcends eras, right? You know, Sterling Moss used to talk about going around Goodwood and being able to watch guys on the sidelines reading newspapers and seeing the headlines on the pages as they turn the paper. And
or waving at the dolly birds at Monaco.
Right, and what's so fascinating about Indy is that the speeds are so high, but you know, all the way back to the beginning of that race, everyone looks at it the same way. They talk about the winds coming through the grandstands. They talk about tiny changes in weather. And the fact that you guys can get to the point where you're, you know, in qualifying, going around at 220 miles an hour and thinking about nothing but what you need to be doing next, not what you're doing then, is remarkable. It's one of my favorite parts of the sport, is that everybody on some level gets into flow state and thinks about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you get to that level and you're able to focus like that, and when you're competing against guys where everyone is at that level and it's so tight in the times, it's what makes the sport so special. If it wasn't so competitive, there would be no drive. So I remember qualifying here this year, and it was, you know, top 5 was separated within 0.2 of a second.
Right.
So it's you know, the car makes a big difference. Your driving definitely makes a big difference. Being on your absolute A game with being in the zone when it comes time to putting a lap together for qualifying, it's just really, really cool.
Is it hard, therefore, to come down on a Monday after that adrenaline, after that fight or flight mode where your brain is literally on top C? Because that's another side of it. You know, what do you do after racing? What do you do when you get back to normal life and, you know, you deal with the everyday rubbish that everybody deals with? But you know, you've been at such a heightened level over a weekend for 4 days where the input is, you're almost a machine, let's face it, for that weekend. Is it hard to become a human again?
I would say it comes with experience, right? But when you go into a race weekend, let's say it's Monday coming up to a race weekend, you're mentally prepared for the fact that you're going to come to the racetrack usually on a Thursday. You're going to have practice Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then by the time, you know, the race has happened on Sunday, you're mentally prepared already the week before for the fact that then the race weekend's over, right? So usually right after the Sunday race, you don't have any urge for the next session, because you know mentally, okay, the race weekend's now over. So usually it's pretty relaxing right after that. You'll come home, Monday goes by, and then you get the urge again. Then it's back to training, it's back to being on the sim, and honestly just looking forward to the next race weekend. So it's no, mentally you're prepared for what I kind of just explained.
Well, listen, Benjamin Peterson, it's been absolutely delightful. I'm so happy for you. I've followed your career since you came over. You're sponsored by Dirtfish, and that's why you were doing the rallying. You're racing for AJ Foyt. Do you know your number yet?
It will come out soon.
What was your number in Indy Lights?
24.
Okay. All right. Well, watch this space, folks. Where can they find you? I want people to follow you this year.
Yeah, you know, my personal Instagram, Benjamin Peterson 24. Yeah, you'll have access to all my social media content through there. So yeah, really appreciate it.
Congratulations in Indy Lights. Make it happen in IndyCar. Well done, my friend, and best of luck to you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
You've been listening to Benjamin Peterson, who will be doing a full season with AJ Foyt Racing, and that in itself, what an accolade. Stay with us, Sam, if you can. What an accolade to be racing with a pro like AJ Foyt, one of the greatest of all time. We've been talking about Mario. You know, I mean, to be hanging out with AJ at a race weekend must be pretty nice. Sam, tell us about your thoughts on the weekend. We're about to watch IMSA roll into action, 72 to 77. Are you an IMSA man?
One of the things I love about Laguna is just how much it works for all variety of cars, right? You know, IMSA cars in particular, the cars in this Group 5 feature race, you have a lot of different platforms, you have a lot of different drivetrains, and yet they all have strengths. You know, Laguna is a fast track in places, it is a slow track in places. There are places where it's easy to pass, places where it's difficult to pass. But one way or the other, across the course of a lap, it ends up kind of being an equalizer. And what I think is so great about this particular era of motorsport motorsport in general, is that you could watch from trackside and see how the cars work differently. The front engine BMWs turn in differently than the Porsches do, turn in differently than the Corvettes do, and they all have to work differently with the power and the amount of grip they had, and everybody has strengths and weaknesses. And if you really watch them, and it doesn't take a lot of skill to watch it, it's obvious. If you really watch it, you can see it happening in real time.
Well, we're making our graphics department an easy life because we're bringing in another Smith, Peter Smith this time. It's been the Smiths
There are more
hour.
than a few of us.
Yes, my mom's maiden name is Smith, so I'm with you guys.
All right.
Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
How's your weekend been?
Fabulous.
What have you been up to?
What? Racing the car and.
Well, what car were you racing?
I have a 1958 Austin Healey Bug-Eye Sprite.
Awesome. I saw you out this morning.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
You got a bit of coverage?
Oh, good. Yeah. No, it started every session and it finished every session, and it's going to go home in one piece. So that's a good weekend.
That's a good day at a historic race. How do you like Velocity Invitational?
Oh, it's fantastic. So it's a beautiful pace, lots of fabulous cars, friendly participants. The weather has been mixed, but it's been good. A little cold and foggy the first couple of days, but you know, that's Laguna Seca, so it's been great.
Well, I'm going to throw you straight into the maelstrom of Group 5. What's your IMSA knowledge or love or hate?
I don't know a great deal about IMSA. I have a buddy who's a big IMSA fan, but I see that's a Corvette. It looks like a mid-70s Corvette with a big motor, a lot different than my car.
It's a 1976 Greenwood Corvette, and it is a doozy, isn't it? Lovely, absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, we've got cars here in Group 5 from 1972 to 1977, as Sam was saying. You know, once you get close inspection, these cars are so different, and they turn in differently, and they act differently, and not dissimilar to the cars you're racing against today. Everything's different, and yet you all do the same thing in a different way. That's the best way to describe it, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these cars will accelerate a lot more than my car will. And that's the difference, and I think you'll see this in this race, even between the Corvettes and the Porsches. The Porsches are more a momentum car like mine. They have to keep the momentum going and try not to brake as much as the Corvette, which will need to brake and then jam on the gas and get going. So you'll see the variations in the speed, and that'll determine who gets ahead and who can stay ahead.
And this is also what's so great about this era is that this was a time when certain manufacturers, different manufacturers had different approaches to how suspension should work. Sam Posey once told me that the BMW 3.0 CSL and 3.5 CSL, they were designed to effectively work for Hans Stuck, who liked to drive sideways. He was a fast factory driver. He knew how to work the car, and he basically drove through the side windows. But when you drive the thing, I had a chance to test one a couple of years ago, and what was remarkable about it was just how much that felt true. It didn't matter what you wanted the car to do, it was going to do that. And an RSR is the same way, a Datsun Z car is the same way. They all have what they like and what they want. And the guys who were very, very good in period, just like many of the historic drivers today, know how to give them what they want. And it's such a remarkable thing to see, because again, you can watch it trackside and see the cars moving.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a competitive, Peter. How's it been as an experience? I mean, you must do a lot of historics. Have Ryan Turey and Jeffrey O'Neill got it right?
I think so. We had the drivers meeting the other day, and the attitude is go out there and have fun, be respectful for the other cars, and I think you've seen that this weekend. There's been good behavior from the competitors, but there's been fun racing. There's some fun racing in my group, and I think that's the recipe for success.
Yeah, and I think on behalf of the mere mortals, those that don't get to do and drive these fantastic exotic cars, I think you really can learn a lot here. The drivers are approachable, the people who are purveying the cars are approachable, and even the likes of a Mario and a Mika, a Pato who came up and sat with us. We just had Benjamin Pedersen, an IndyCar driver. These guys are approachable, and it's a weekend where they enjoy it. I mean, Pato said to me, these are the weekends I enjoy as a racing driver because I can be myself. I don't have to worry what I'm saying and how I'm coming across to the media or what my team manager or sponsors want me to say. And that's great for them because it allows us to enjoy them and them to enjoy motor racing.
And Pato's so great. You know, he was actually sick before he got here. He popped a bunch of medicine. He so badly wanted to be here and do this. Because, again, even for him, for, you know, a modern, current IndyCar driver, getting to have seat time in some of these McLaren Formula One cars is a dream, and you know he said this much. But he popped a bunch of meds, got on a plane, and got here, and he, because it matters to him. And not all pro drivers are like that. And when you meet the ones who love the history and love the cars, they fit right in with this sort of thing.
Well, you're looking at that 54 of Charles Christensen in that Porsche. He's currently in 10th position. Chet Taylor leading the way in the 155. Porsche 911 from IMSA, that's from 1974, and Chandler Briscoe chasing him down in the 55 at BMW 3.5 CSL. So have a look at the list, Peter, see if there's any you fancy or...
Well, I see Ranson Webster in a 1973 911. He ran a Porsche in my group, I think.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, he's very fast, so I'll keep an eye on him.
It's interesting, you know, we see these two 911s going up the hill, and it's interesting, too, because what we have here is a little bit of a cross-section of a pretty healthy evolutionary era in the IMSA racing. You know, there are narrow-body 911s, there are wide-body 911s, there are Group 2 and Group 4 BMWs. As the era went on, manufacturers and teams were playing with what worked better. And some of that, in some cases, it was more tire, it was more aero. In some cases, it didn't work. And you can see that in how the cars go through the corners and how the drivers work them. This particular BMW has the later body kit on it, the big long wing, the bigger fenders than the earlier CSLs, and it is noticeably different, and it drives slightly different from the earlier cars. It's a neat cross-section.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you know, we've got a good cross-section of IMSA cars from the mid-70s, but it was still, at that point, dominated. We've got those Chevrolet Corvettes out there, but really you're looking at the Japanese and the European manufacturers totally dominated in this era.
And I see one British car on the list here, a TR8, which is...
Well, you've got a Ford Capri, if that counts.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, Zach Brown's out there in a Ford Capri.
What's the engine in that Capri? Is it the V8 or is it a 6?
That I don't know. You've got to... I'll riddle me. Carry on talking.
All right.
I'll find out.
So the TR8, is that a Group 44 car?
It is a 3-liter 6. I'm Julian.
Okay.
Ford. There you go. That was Roger, not Eric. Oh, we got some passing. Now we've also got a car slowing. That's not good. Let's hope he's okay. So Group 5 in full sway here. The 911 from 1970, that full orange with Ross Merrill at the wheel. He's from Salinas, just down the road.
I do get so lost up in the evolution of 911s, right? You know, on the one hand, you have this tiny sports car that evolved in so many different ways for so many different series, and through the years, you know, the fact that the doors and the windows are really all that remained unchanged. You know, here we have narrow body stuff going out of the corkscrew down into turn 9. You know, all of them are fundamentally underneath the same car, but they are so drastically different in how they make their power and how they work on a racetrack. And at the end of the day, they're all still 911s, which means they carry most of their mass in the back. They want to enter a corner with the taillights first. They spend a lot of time moving around in the hands of people who are really good at the wheel. It's great stuff to watch. And
I can't think of a manufacturer that came out with a car that has been not bulletproof, but damn near in everywhere it's gone, from every kind of racing, from endurance racing to sprint racing. You talk to drivers, and every time I talk to a Porsche driver, I say, what is it about the 911? And you know, the obvious thing is, like you say, the weight in the back, but there's more to it than that, and they've refined it year on year of Porsche, and it's one of those success stories that I don't think will be easy to repeat, let's say in the next 30 years, because it's just one of those cars that is instantly recognizable from the 356 all the way to the current GT3 car, and beyond to some of these hypercars even from Gunter Works that we saw. you know, it really is so distinctive, and very few marques have been able to pull that off.
It's interesting too, because you know, when you really start digging into how the company works and how its history has worked, so much of it initially was driven by timing and a lack of funding. But you know, everybody looks at the 911 and thinks, okay, well, you know, over the course of 50 years it evolved, but it was a careful evolution. Some of it was driven by what they needed to do and wanted to do, and some of it was driven by what they had to do, what they did or didn't have the money to do, because for so long it was a small family company. And it's such a great story because it is equal parts underdog and overdog, equal parts family story and corporation, and with all of these twists and turns inside of it. And in the end, you have this one distinctive shape and this silhouette that carries through all of it, and a philosophy which is ultimately that you just keep trying and you just keep poking at it until you get it right. And they clearly did.
Oh, no question about it. And, you know, if you look at marques like Mercedes have got a different way of doing it. They've got such a cross-section of different cars for different markets and different kinds of drivers, whereas Porsche have concentrated so much. They're branching out now, but that 911, you know, wherever you want to talk about it, it's like, oh, yeah, I know what that is. Peter, what would you like to have driven today besides the little Sprite that you did?
Well, there were a couple of cars in my run group that I would love to drive. There was a 250 GTO, there were some 250 short wheelbases, and there were some Alfa Romeo TZs. Any one of those cars would be wonderful to drive. But again, I'm just happy to be out here in my little bug-eye on the track with those cars and get to see them slide through the corners real close and personal, and it's a lot of fun.
I've been asking, go ahead, Sam.
No, I was going to say, you talked earlier about the choices Jeff and his team have made to assemble this event. And you know, you mentioned the GTO. That's the car that Jeff shares. It's owned by a friend of his. He gets to drive it, which in the big scheme of things is an awful privilege. It's fantastic, but it was sitting out like everything else underneath those tents earlier. And I walked by right before lunch this morning, and I did a double take because there were two little boys, probably about 7 or 8 years old, sitting in it. And they were just grinning ear to ear. And then their father came over and someone helped them open the door, and when they got out, 2 other kids were shuffled into a 250 GTO, which is a healthy double-digit millions of car, and it was there to be shared. And one of the things that one of the instructions Jeff had given was that the car should be shared with people who came up. So there were families coming up, and the minder who was standing next to the car was letting kids get in and out of it. And you don't see that anywhere else. It's a neat choice because ultimately this event really does care about spectators, and that matters, because if you can't share these stories going forward, why do they exist?
Exactly, I love that sentiment. And I want to ask a question of both of you that I've asked almost everybody that's been in here. Where did you catch the bug? When did you catch the bug, and why?
So I must have caught the bug when I was very little, and we were on a summer vacation, and my dad let us go in the go-karts. And I had to drive something from then on. I must have been 7 or 8. And then my parents are both from the UK, and I used to get shipped over there summers. And I got the bug for British cars when I went over there because they were so different from the cars that we saw growing up. And so I bought a British car when I graduated from school, and as I advanced, a friend of mine put me in a racing school, and the next thing I knew, I was buying a racing car and restoring it, and here I am.
And Sam, how about you?
I grew up around a British sports car restoration shop that my father opened a little later in my life, but when I was little, he had a series of MGs, one of which was an MGTC, and I have this vivid memory of being about 6 years old, and we went for a ride in the car. I think we were going to get lunch or coffee or something, and you know, T-Series MGs have an ash frame with hand-hammered panels over them, and I was sitting on the left side because the car's right-hand drive, and we went around a right-hand corner, and because, you know, when a T-Series MG gets a little old, the wood starts to flex, the body flexes, maybe the door latches get loose. We went around this right-hand corner, the door opened, car didn't have seat belts, and I nearly fell out of the car at about 30 miles an hour, and my dad reached over and grabbed me by the shirt, and so I vividly remember hanging out into traffic through an MGTC with the door open, going through an intersection with my dad's hand, and all I sat there thinking was, this is amazing, and I want more, and I'm going to die, and it's great. Just didn't stop.
That. That's a good story.
It's a very good story.
Listen, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. Chet Taylor still leading on the final lap here in our Group 5 feature race. The sun has come out, but it's going down at the same time, but it's a beautiful evening coming into one as we look at the 155 of Chet Taylor leading the way in, of course, what? A Porsche. Yes, absolutely. But a 911 IMSA from 1974 as we look at the years of 72 to 77 in IMSA. Somewhat apropos, since we've spoken quite a lot about the Porsche, that it should come home first this afternoon, followed by the BMW CSL. And I have to say, that BMW CSL was also a car that, growing up, started me getting excited about racing. And that's, again, a rare silhouette of BMWs. I absolutely love the 70s shape of the BMW.
Yeah, there's something about that whole period of the company's history, and you hit my other button, which is 2002s and CSLs. Yeah. I grew up with those, club raced those, well, club raced 2002s, and there is this whole, you talk about Porsche being a family, but BMW in particular, the CSL came out of an era when they did not have a lot of money. Over here, they basically ran a handful of cars, shipped over a handful of Germans to Alabama, put them in a warehouse, and ran them around the country, and at a time when people still thought those letters meant British Motor Works, and there is just this delicate and wonderful innocence about the cars from that period, and they did wonderful things with relatively simple engineering. It's such a neat story.
And to be fair, the likes of David Hobbs, Brian Redmond also took it to the next level in those cars, because then that really brought them home, because they just ragged those cars and made them so popular in the racing terms as well. And so, as they say, the rest is history. Well, I'm so glad you two have enjoyed your weekend as much as I have. As we see Chet Taylor take the winner, checkered flag, in his 74 Porsche in our IMSA Group 5. We've got the mini race coming up, and we're looking forward to what has been a great weekend of racing, no doubt about it. My thanks to both of you coming in, and thank you. We'll see you again, I'm sure. Right. Keep that bug eye going.
I will. It's been a pleasure.
Sam,
thank you.
Stay with us. We're going to talk a little bit more, but thank you, sir, for coming in. And we're going to take a short break. But before we do, with cyber attacks on the rise, a weakness in one area of your business can be a risk for all. CrowdStrike's cybersecurity platform wins in the race to protect your valuable data. By harnessing the speed and power of the cloud, CrowdStrike's cloud-native Falcon platform protects and defends your organization to identify and stop the most sophisticated cyber attacks. Gain the peace of mind to focus on your business momentum, not what's trying to stop it. That's protection that powers you. To learn more and to try CrowdStrike Falcon free today, visit crowdstrike.com. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back from Laguna Seca after this.